So this session is called The Worst Negotiating Mistakes Women Make and How to Avoid Shooting Yourself in the Foot When the Stakes Are High. It's a bit of a mouthful, but you get the point. And just a little bit about me. I am a mentor and a business coach, and I work exclusively with creative professionals. That includes copywriters, of course, designers, illustrators, photographers, marketers, consultants, etc. I'm also the programming partner for a big design conference called How Design Live, and I've written 7 books, including The Creative Professional's Guide to Money. Enough about me.
And will some of those be here?
No, but you can find them on Amazon. So I'm a little nervous because I don't usually share my own experience when I speak. And this is the first time I'm giving this presentation. I hope it's not the last time, but I've never done it before, so it won't be perfect. And it is personal. I'm going to try to articulate what I've learned in the last year. And it's kind of about negotiating. And thank you for the opportunity. Because I want to talk about misogyny. I read a book in preparation for this called Misogyny, A Brief History of Misogyny, and the subtitle is The World's Oldest Prejudice. So that means it's been around for a long time, and we are swimming in it. And I think it's a bad thing. And of course, we've come very far. We wouldn't be here if we hadn't. But modern misogyny takes the form of, this is a definition from the book, it keeps men in charge of evaluating women. By discounting and dismissing our accomplishments and our capabilities. So I heard people say, oh, they just wrote me off. Oh, I can't do math. I can't do math is actually how we do it to ourselves. It's not just men. All right, and so I want to talk about how we are misogynistic to ourselves when we go to the negotiating table. Because we are complicit and we have to stop. We should not, cannot discount and dismiss our own capabilities and accomplishments before we get to the negotiating table. That's the problem.
How many women did that when you had to do those strengths card? When you went back, how many of you realized you had done that to yourself? To yourself.
Sometimes we don't even know we're doing it to ourselves. That's part of the problem. And that's kind of what I want to try to lift the veil on, if you will, a little bit here today. Because I do think we can change it. Yes. Because if I don't value myself, who will? And if you don't value yourself, who will? So, I'm 56, and I now know that I can take care of myself. I have, by the way, been taking care of myself since I was 18. I just didn't know it until this past year. So I now know that I can take care of myself. And what that means is I don't need anyone. And I changed this at the last minute because it used to say I don't need anyone. That's the cowboy, cowgirl, right? I don't mean I don't need anyone. I mean I don't need anyone. I need everyone. Yes. All right? So in my business, I need clients. But I don't need any one client. I don't need one to stay with me. I don't need one book deal. I don't need one speaking engagement. I don't need any one big project. I need all of them. And when I'm negotiating, I don't need any one particular person to say yes to me. Ever. All I need is a backbone. Right? Which also known as self-respect. Okay. Because I know I have the smarts and the resources to figure it out. I can go get what I need. And I didn't really know that until recently, even though I've been doing it. All right? So I'm talking about autonomy. Some people might call it confidence. I don't consider myself a confident person. Some people look at me and they say, oh, you're so confident? I don't think so. I have courage. I think what we need is courage. I'm not going to talk about fear. I think there's too much talk about fear when it comes to women. But we need courage. And especially if you are an experienced newbie. This is a term I came up with recently, and I have a podcast series, or a series of podcasts actually, on this topic of experienced newbies, because people who are new to something but have a long history of a lot of other things, exactly, seem to, for some reason, not bring the confidence and courage that they had in their history to this new thing that they're doing, and they feel very insecure. And so part of my mission is to help people who consider themselves experienced newbies to bring the strengths into the new thing. Bring them to bear, because they're very valuable, and you can communicate about them. So I want to share what I'm calling 5 mindset shifts before I get to the worst mistakes. And these are things that we say to ourselves, because I do think that negotiating starts with what I say to myself. So we're going to do polls here, and please don't be embarrassed, because we know we're not alone, right? But how many people have ever said to themselves or someone else, I am not a business person? All right? And you'll notice that I'm putting the things we say on black, and the things I'm suggesting we say on white. So instead of that, perhaps you might try, I can become a savvy businesswoman.
Let's just say that.
All right.
1, 2, 3.
I can become a savvy businesswoman. Okay? Might take some practice.
From the mirror.
Exactly. How about raise your hand, I don't like talking about money. Come on. All right. How about instead, I can ask for and get paid what I need? Not what I'm worth, by the way, what I need. So shall we say it?
1, 2, 3.
I can ask for and get paid what I need. Because what I'm worth, that's so subjective. And it depends on each different situation. So I don't really even like to think about what you're worth. It's what you need. I don't like putting a price on my work. Anyone feel that way? A few brave souls, all right. How about my work has value and I will be compensated accordingly? You like that one? Let's try it.
2, 3.
My work has value and I will be compensated accordingly. These are, again, things you say to yourselves. You may not come right out and say this to the person you're negotiating with. I have to give them what they're asking for. Raise your hand if you have ever felt like you had to give them what they were asking for. You know, you don't, of course. Instead, I am generous with myself, and I'm going to take the fill in the blank that I need, whether it's time or questions or resources or money or whatever it is. But 1, 2, 3. I am generous with myself, and I take the time I need. And finally, I lower my prices even when they don't ask me to. Thank you for raising your hand. This is everything from underestimating, what I call wishful estimating, about how long something you think it's going to take you, to literally putting a price out there and saying, oh, maybe that's too much, I'll cut it off, right? It's really not necessary. So my alternative is, I know when to walk away. I know when to walk away. And Pauline just told us that story about her walking away, so thank you for that. So important to know when to...
The short version is sod.
Sawed off. I didn't understand that, but now I think I do. All right. So before I get to the 7 mistakes, I want to share the 3 simple steps to pricing, because if you don't know how to price, you're probably not going to negotiate very well. So pricing your services, this is really the kernel of it, basically. So step 1, very simple, figure out what you need, not what you want, not what you're worth, figure out what you need, and please be realistic. Oh, and by the way, see where it says gettalk.at/negotiating? That's where you can download this presentation now or later. It's there waiting for you. Gettalk.at/negotiating. So step 1, I see everyone writing down step 1. Figure out what you need and please be realistic. This is internal. Step 2, find out what they can pay. That's the money conversation. You're not negotiating yet. You're getting information, you're asking questions, you're finding out what they can pay. And step 3 is the negotiation where you come to a price together. All right? It's really as simple as that. No matter if you're talking about $500, $5,000, or $50,000. By the way, that's my trick, some of you may know it, for getting the budget from someone. When they say, I'm sorry, I don't know what it is, or we don't have one, or I'm not going to give it to you, you say, well, then is it 500, 5,000, or 50,000? Please at least tell me where on the spectrum you are. And they will. They will. If they don't, you walk away. All right, and now, 7 of what I call the worst mistakes. Because again, Pauline, I want to quote Pauline, because she said it is the little things, and I agree. Because I'm not talking about big mistakes here. I'm talking about small mistakes, because the small ones are the most imperceptible and the easiest to ignore, and therefore the most lethal to ourselves. All right? So here are 7 mistakes that I've made. I'm not going to tell stories about each of them. But mistake number 1 is when they put a number on the table, you take whatever's offered. That's their floor. When people start negotiating, they give you their floor, the bottom, not the top, right? They give you their lowest number. If you just take it, you're not going to get any more. Know that they have more to offer. They're never going to start with their ceiling. You have to start with your ceiling. That's mistake number 2, actually. Mistake number 1 is you take their floor. So the solution to that mistake? Ask for more. Always ask for more. I do actually have 2 stories, which I can't see in the notes because it's too small, but I think I remember them. This is where it's not going to be perfect. An editor asked me to write an article. She said, we have $1,000 and we want 2,000 words in 2 weeks. I said, I was thinking $2,000. So I doubled it. That's not a rule, but always nice to just ask for twice as much as they offer so that you can come to something in the middle. Step 3, right? So I said I was thinking 2,000. She said, we really only have 1,200 at the most. I said, all right, because I wanted to do this. I said, for 1,200, I'll give you 1,200 words, and I want 3 weeks. And she said yes. So a simple negotiation, right? Just a little back and forth. I could have said, no, I'm sorry, that's not worth it to me. Or, you know, there are many different ways I could have spun that, but this worked for both of us. And the long history with this person. And she didn't have a lot of money to spend. The other story is a Chinese company came to me not too long ago, and they said, we want you to come to San Francisco for a day of meetings, and we'll give you $1,000, and we'll cover your travel expenses. And I said, no, thank you. I actually said, I didn't say no. I said, let me think about it, because I always say, let me think about it. I never say yes or no on the first conversation. I just always say, let me think about it. I went back to them and I said, I'd like $2,500 plus expenses and the money in my account, you know, before I make any commitment. And they said, fine, and they paid it immediately. So who knows what else I could have asked for, right? And actually, I did have a further negotiation with that company where they said, all right, now we want you, because I did go and I did the meeting, and then they said, now we want you to do a course for us. We'll pay you $300 to $500 for each lesson. 10 lessons, please. $3,000 for a course. I was like, let's add a 0, please. That's always a good rule, too, add a 0. I said, $3,000 to $5,000 per lesson, please. And they said no. And we tried to come to a place in the middle. I gave them what my floor was. They didn't take it. I walked away. It was definitely not worth it to me. So just some simple examples. Always ask for more. Rebecca Matter knows when she comes to me and says, will you do this? Here's what I offer you. I always ask for more. So she knows. She gives me her floor. And that's actually mistake number 2. Well, not exactly. Start over. Mistake number 2. When you make the first offer, right? So they're not coming to you and saying, here's what we have to offer you. Now it's them saying, what's your price? and you're going to put the first number on the table. Because there are lots of people who think, oh, you're not supposed to be the one to put the first number on the table. I don't believe that. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. And again, if you want a number, at least to start with, say 500, 5,000, 50,000, what spectrum are we talking about? And when you put the first number on the table, you must start high. If you don't start high enough, you're not going to be able to go up. You can never go up. You can only go down. Except I do have a story, actually, about a time when I gave a low number. I blurted out a price. It was too low. They took it immediately. I knew I had made a mistake. I went back the next day, and I said, I think I didn't quote high enough. Do you mind if I do it again and quote a higher number? And he said, go ahead. And I did. Because he knew it was too low. Right? So it's not, there's tons of creative ways to go about this. And I think often women especially feel like, uh-oh. Like when I parked at the airport yesterday, I chose one lane. I knew I should have chosen the other, but it was too late because I already got the ticket. Like, okay, I couldn't go back. But when you're negotiating, you can definitely go back. So give yourself room to negotiate. Your ceiling, right, is where you start because you're trying to find a place between their floor and your ceiling. That's your fee. That's where you're going to get paid. Mistake number 3, you make assumptions. You know how you do this? You make assumptions. Oh, they're not going to be able to afford that. Because you think they have something to do with you and you can't afford it, so they must not be able to afford it either. Totally wrong, right? Ask all the questions you need in order to get the information you need, including what's your budget, and then push until they give you a number. Mistake number 4, being impulsive and blurting out prices. I already told a story about that. Because, and this is kind of coercive, and this is sometimes what men do. Come on, just give me a price. Just give me a number. They push. And you have to say, sorry, I need time. I need to think about it. I need to get my questions answered. And then, when I'm ready, I will give you a number. And again, if they are not willing to go through that process, because that's your qualifying process. If you can't go through that process with them, it's really not a good client. Walk away. Mistake number 5, being desperate and not having a backup plan. And I'm not talking about communicating desperation. That's a whole other thing. I'm talking about actually being desperate, feeling desperate. You must know what your alternatives are. You must know that you have alternatives, that you will figure it out if this thing doesn't come through. If you don't get that job, you have the smarts and the resources to find something better. So know your alternatives. Mistake number 6, betraying your nervousness by talking too much. Raise your hand if you've done that. So this is another one of those situations where you're going to have the conversation, the money conversation, you're going to put your number on the table, and then you're going to shut up. And when they don't say anything, you're not going to say, I could do it for less. You're just going to shut up. So let there be silence. And finally, devaluing your services by cutting your prices, basically, without adjusting the scope. So I'm not saying you have to put a number out there and never lower it. You're going to put your ceiling out there, and then you're going to come down to what you know where your bottom line is, you know where you're going to stop, and you're going to adjust the scope like I did with the editor, simple, if you can come to a number. All right, but never, ever just say, all right, that thing I said I would do for $3,000, I'll do it for $1,500. That is disrespectful to yourself. So I must, and I can, take control of my own career, right? And that means negotiating the best possible deals for myself. That's what we're here to do. So I'm not going to go over this, but this is a list of everything I just said, basically, on one slide, and you can get it at... Oh, that's weird. All right, gettalk.at/negotiating. All right, thank you.
For sure.
Sure,
Yeah.
I'll take questions.
Let's do some questions. Tiara, you have the mic. Okay, question. We've got one back here.
Can the negotiating conversation, does it need to take place on the phone? Or have you ever done something like through emails back and forth? For example, if you have extreme time zones.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think more and more negotiating does happen via email. But it depends on the situation. And when you're not on the phone, you can't hear when someone is falling off their chair. So you want to be able to hear when someone is like they didn't expect that. But there are ways to do it, certainly via email. But I think, if possible, try to get an actual conversation at some point in the process. Because otherwise, it's just too hard to it's too easy to fantasize about what's going on for them if you don't have an actual experience.
And then you make up all the stories.
Exactly.
Because of all of our predispositions to take ourselves out of the game.
Exactly.
We have one back here. Go. Actually, we have two. I'll go and then pass
Alice?
forward, one at a time.
Hi. So I think I've recently shot myself in the foot with
Okay.
a proposal, but it was in sort of, it's leaning on a bigger job that I'm hoping to get from the same person. So they're trying to get sort of a quickie done in order to do the big stuff. And so I'm fairly good at negotiating. I'm pretty confident in how I price myself. However, now I think I've totally undershot myself. Luckily, the proposal expired, so I can go back to the table, but I don't want to risk the bigger, much more fun project that's looming. It's the worst word,
they're
but
teasing
the
you with.
tease
Right,
that's
the
at the end of it, because
carrot.
I think
Yeah.
it will be fantastic
And
to do
we've all
that.
gotten that, right? But if
Yeah.
you do all this collateral for me, then next time.
Right.
So how
And
do
so
you
here's
handle
my
that?
question. Do you try and stand your ground regardless and just kind of do the thing where you say, I have alternatives, for the bigger stuff? Or do you sort of, what would you do in this situation? Would you try and stay hard and firm and value yourself?
It's very hard, once you've set a precedent, to change it. That's what I would be careful of. If you have said, all right, I'll do this little thing for a little bit of money, but when we get to the big stuff, I'm going to charge big money, they may not perceive the difference
They
because...
suggested that.
Huh?
They said they want to actually spend the money on the big project. This is just the small one. So it came from them.
Except that there's no guarantee that you're going to
There's
get
no
the big one.
guarantee,
So they're
exactly.
using
And you
it as
can,
clickbait.
but you can negotiate a deal where they give you both and you do the first one first.
Ooh, I like that. Good call.
All right, we can-
Then you know that big one's yours. Then you know that big one's yours. We had one right in front.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a client that I've been working with for a very long time. And it's one of those people that it was like one of the first people I ever worked with, So it's like, you will give me a tiny amount of money and I'm going to do a little thing every month. And it's been going on for a long time and I want to
Bring them up.
renegotiate. I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
bring them up
Yeah.
a notch. What's a good way
That's a great one.
Yeah,
So
it is a
many
good
of us
question.
start this,
I-
the first
I wanna
client you
raise
start
my
out
prices
with.
with
Yeah,
this
how do you
person.
raise your rates? We've been
So,
working with them a long time.
so there are two issues. One is maybe you've outgrown them, number one.
That is a very distinct
Think
possibility.
about that.
But
I
I,
mean-
do love her. I do love her, but I think that might be the
We
case.
should outgrow most of our early clients. But if you do, for whatever reason, want to keep this client, then you can simply say, and I've said this to people and I've advised people to say this, look, when we started, I was charging this, and I have not raised my rates to you ever since, and now what I'm charging is this. So let's figure out how we can come closer to that, and it is a negotiation, and what do you think is fair, what do I think is fair, and if they are not interested, then that is a nice opportunity to say, all right, well, I guess I've outgrown you.